Shalom, it's Rabbi David Barron of Temple of the Arts with my weekly 5-minute Torah Talk. So this week we're going to talk about the portion of Shlach, the story of the spies that were sent out to spy in the land of Canaan. As you remember the story, the Israelites were wandering in the wilderness and they finally came to the edge of the promised land, and Moses sent out Joshua and the spies. And their job was to do a bit of a reconnaissance mission. Was the land something they could conquer? Many of the peoples who lived in that land were resisting their ability to enter the land and to establish themselves in their historic homeland. And so they would have to conquer many of these fortified cities. And he sent out the group of spies. Now, this was towards the beginning of the Israelites wandering, so to speak, and the spies came back with a report, and they created panic among the people. They said, we were like little ants. The people are giants. There's no way we could ever conquer this place. There's no way we could ever prevail and carve out our own home. And they created that panic and wailing and backsliding and said, let's go back to Egypt. What do we want to get killed here? The women and children will all be massacred. Only two people, Caleb and Joshua, said, with God's help, we can prevail. They were the minority report. Amongst all the madness and the chaos and the negativity, they had a message, and the message was one of faith. You know, it's really important to sometimes listen, not just to the majority report, which is often jaundiced and based on fear and anxiety, but sometimes listen to the voice of the few who are sane, who are trying to give you a message that you can prevail. The Jewish community was very supportive and in one alignment with the civil rights movement, doing away with segregation, moving forward into a new era, a new time. But they were frightened as well. They were afraid to speak up. Why? The Ku Klux Klan might burn down a Jewish store, might paint signs on a synagogue, anti-Semitic slogans. So the Jewish community of the South was very reticent to take a public stand supporting the civil rights movement. But there were heroic exceptions, and those heroic exceptions were the voices that prevailed. They were, if you will, the minority report. It's so important that we realize that in any endeavor, any undertaking, we have to listen to the minority voices. Senator Scott was saying something else very interesting. He was saying, you know, I've been arrested, or stopped, I should say, 14 times for what he called driving while black. In other words, an officer pulled him over just because of the color of his skin. He said, you know, I could be jaundiced and filled with hate and anger and disgust at that, or I can look at the whole picture and listen to the voices of white policemen who are making an impact on the African American community. Every Christmas, he said, we go out and we distribute gifts to children in the poorest black community, the poorest part of the black community. So let's look at the whole picture. And the whole picture means looking at the minority report as well, the voices you might not hear, the opinions and points of view that might be overlooked. That's critical in making intelligent and compassionate decisions. So the Israelites, well, as a result of their distrust of God's plan, as a result of their fear and anxiety, they were destined to continue wandering for 40 years in the wilderness until that generation of Egypt died off and a new young generation that wasn't possessed by fear and the slave mentality could emerge. And that was the group that would forge ahead into the promised land, creating that beautiful place that we know of as Israel. So I hope you take this message to heart this Shabbat, a message of listening to all voices, including the minority, and moving forward in life with the full picture, a picture that is filled with understanding and compassion. Shabbat Shalom.